Welcome. It took a little bit to get in, but now we are here, and well, we have what to present. So I'll just jump straight into it without much introduction. So I'll just start by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land. So the lands where I am and Swinburne campuses are located are Wurundjeri people are the traditional owners, so I acknowledge their elders, past, present, and emerging, and I recognize that we are online, so some of you might be on a different land, so if you wish, please feel free to put the land you are on or the acknowledgement in the chat. Well, my name is Milovan Savic. I'll just be your host today, so our real stars today are Jasmine Knox and Edwina Gow. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing your last name properly. Apparently I do, so that's good. Jess is our own from Swinburne, a PhD candidate, and also leading a project looking at how we can support social connection in the residential aged care. And Edwina Gow is from a manager from Uniting in New South Wales, and she's our partner in this project. So yeah, just to save some time, I will give the mic to two of them and to hear what they have to tell us. There will be hopefully some time as well after their presentation for some comments, but if you have any comments or questions as we go, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll try to address all of it by the end. So thanks again for your patience, and over to you, Edwina and Jess.
Great, thanks, Milovan. Thank you so much for sticking around, everyone. I feel like it's been a real test that you must actually be interested in this issue if you made it past the 15-minute mark. So give me a moment while I just share my screen. So can everybody see that?
Yeah, we can.
Great. Can you see the presenter version or can you see the back end version?
No, it's the back end. It's not the
okay. Oh, okay.
That's better. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So, social connection in residential aged care. So my name's Jasmine, as Milovan said, and Edwina's from Uniting. So we'll skip through intros. So we respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners on which Swinburne's campus is located in Melbourne, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present and emerging. So we did lure you in by saying that we're going to talk about social connection in residential aged care, but to talk about social connection in residential aged care, we need to talk about social isolation and loneliness. And also we're going to touch on a global aging population. So in this session, I'll be outlining some of the research about this issue in residential aged care and the reasons for why we should be thinking about this issue. And Edwina Gow is going to give you an idea of what this issue looks like up close from a practitioner's perspective. And then once you're all in a state of despair, we're going to, because of the gloomy situation, we're going to introduce a project that we have been working on with the Salvation Army and Uniting to support social and emotional wellbeing for older people in residential aged care. And then we'll have some time for some questions and some discussion, hopefully, because I invited a few people. I can see a few names already from the sector, so it'd be great to get everybody's feedback and yeah, have a little robust discussion about this. So it's well established that social isolation and loneliness is an issue in our society. And although it can affect all people from across the lifespan, the World Health Organization found that older people living in aged care facilities are in the top risk bracket for experiencing social isolation and loneliness. So this has deleterious effects on health and well-being, with feelings of loneliness being associated with depression, increased levels of anxiety and stress hormones, impaired cognitive performance, cognitive decline, and progression of Alzheimer's disease. And last but not least, reduced mortality. So in Australia in 2021, the Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety found that our current aged care system leaves too many older people isolated and disconnected. So the report highlights issues related to understaffing across the sector, high staff turnover rates, and lack of training to support a skilled workforce. And despite the Royal Commission finding that the current aged care system does not sufficiently recognise the importance of proactively supporting older people's social and emotional wellbeing, it's worth noting that only 2 out of the 148 recommendations made related to people's social and emotional wellbeing. So it does indicate that this is not really seen as a priority in Australia compared to biomedical health. Even though there's so much research that links this issue and how it impacts on our health, our physical health. So depression in aged care is quite common, with half of older Australians living in residential aged care having significant levels of depression. And depression is commonly treated with antidepressants. There's been an increase since 2006 that's been quite significant on prescribing these kind of medications. And although other treatments such as CBT and psychological therapy have been found to be effective in reducing symptoms of depression, a recent study by Swinburne researchers found that psychological therapy may not be more effective than extra social contact in reducing symptoms of depression. So to add to this issue, which I think is important, globally, we're an aging population. So the number of older people is expected to double to 2.1 billion by 2050. So the population projections are similar in Australia, with people aged over 65 expected to double in 2057. So we can be sure that more people will spend time in residential aged care facilities in the future. So why should we care? Well, the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members, the famous Mahatma Gandhi quote. So that is the moral call for us to care. But if that doesn't appeal to you, how about a statistic that is maybe a little closer to home? So in Australia, more than 1/3 of all men and more than 1/2 of all women will be admitted into residential aged care at some time in their life. So that was from a background paper from the Royal Commission. And so the odds are pretty good that in the future you or someone you love is going to end up spending some time in a facility that does not actively support your social and emotional well-being. And that you or a loved one will have more than 50% chance of spending your final years being depressed. So, and if you need some other reasons, there's some pretty significant financial reasons. So during 2022 to 23, the Australian government spent almost 28.3 billion on aged care, with the largest proportion being spent on residential aged care. So it is worth noting that Australia as a country, compared to other OECD countries, does not spend near as much as other countries do on aged care. But other countries such as Denmark, Germany, or Finland. But 31 billion is budgeted for 24 to 25. So as a country, we do spend a bit of money on aged care, and we're going to have to spend a lot more, with budget parliamentary office projections showing that in 2030 to 31, aged care will account for 5% of all Australian government spending. So with the aging population, we are going to be spending a lot of money. So if we are going to spend this money, we need to spend it wisely in order to support older people. So that's enough about what the research says. Edwina Gow, who's a manager at Uniting, is going to talk to you and tell you a bit about what this looks like from a perspective of somebody that is working in this environment.
Thank you, Jasmine. Yes, so I've been working in the aged care sector now for nearly 20 years, I think. Yeah, nearly about that. And I guess it all started back when I was newly qualified as a qualified diversional therapist. least that's what we were called back then. I'm not sure we've all got different titles nowadays, but I started working in a relatively small aged care facility that we had 35 beds from memory. And it was my first job out of uni, so I was all, ready to go, super excited, but I was the only lifestyle staff member on the team, and I had a huge learning curve ahead of me. But what I identified early on was that although we had all these activities running and groups of people people having the opportunity to meet together in groups of groups of people, they didn't always choose to come together. And a lot of people decided that they would prefer to stay in their rooms. And we'd only get a couple of people coming to the groups. And it wasn't that there was no variety, like there was plenty of variety. It was just that people weren't all that interested in connecting in that in that way, or doing those sorts of activities. So it actually, it got me thinking, and I'm sure it's probably a similar experience maybe that some of you have got as well. But it got me thinking, and I started to speak really closely with a lot of residents. And I've got one lady in particular that's in my mind constantly, every day I'm at work. Bless her, I'm sure she's probably not still around now, but she said something to me one day that really got me thinking, and it's that quote down on the screen. She said to me, "Edwina, this is not living, it's just existing." And that quote sticks with me all the time, because I always think back to it, what would make her life more meaningful for her? So not to go into full details of the story, but really she had visitors, she had family, people would come and see her. She would enjoy attending a couple of activities, but really not many, because she just didn't find it worthwhile. So I decided to use her as my little, I suppose, experiment at the time. And I had a chat with her just to see what would take to connect with her. What did she need? And all she wanted was someone to come in, and she could make scones for them in the afternoon. And then you'd come in the afternoon and have tea and scones with her. And she unfortunately, I don't know how you see it, but she attached herself to me, and she wanted to hear about me. Possibly I worked out by the end it's because I was young. She wanted to hear about my life experiences and those sorts of things. But what she really wanted was to be able to put on that afternoon tea and have someone come and have a meaningful conversation with her. So at the time she was 97. She was very fortunate in that she still had her faculties, mentally. Physically, she probably had declined. She couldn't quite do as much as she wanted, but she really just wanted that connection. And for her, what was most important was sitting and having that conversation one-on-one. As I worked out, it was with someone younger, such as myself at the time. And then, as being able to connect her in with what was important to her, I ended up getting school program involved, and she connected really well with one student that was in year 12 studying, and she could hear all about their study, and she loved it. So that's just a case study of looking at what's most important to each individual. And that's what really got me thinking. I thought, I can't be the person, and the staff members can't always be that one point of connection for the older people to help them to be connected. We need to look at other ways of doing that, and getting people together to play bingo wasn't really meeting that demand of what people were needing. So it's probably a story that I'm sure would resonate with a lot of you. I've seen, on the list, there's quite a few of leisure and lifestyle related people here. So I hope that resonates with you. But I just thought I'd start with that, because it just gives a bit of an understanding of a lot of people see that connection is getting people together and to do something, to do an activity. But I think the hardest part is actually finding out, and the thing that takes the longest is actually finding out what is most important, what brings value, what brings meaning, and what brings purpose to an individual, and how can we support that in residential aged care. So that's where I started. I then ended up, I now work in home care and have been doing that for over 12 years now. So slightly different. However, I still see similar themes within the home care space, particularly around ageism and what older people are able to do. There's a sort of a bit of a stigma around that once you get older, it's like your social connections don't matter anymore, or that it becomes a lower priority, and people, I know particularly in home care, are more interested, or family members are more interested in getting people involved with their domestic assistance sorted, having their showers. Transport is a big one, to medical appointments. And if there's anything left over for social connection, or maybe we'll think about it, but probably we won't bother. And so that's, I think, in terms of an entry point into the aged care, residential aged care space, people are already coming in with mentalities that, that they're coming in to die, essentially. They are moving away from their family, their friends, potentially. They're also relocating out of their community, their local community. They may have, relationships with people just at the coffee shop or at the butcher that they go to each week. And that all gets taken away when they move into residential aged care. And I think that's what we need to keep in mind when we're looking at what helps people to connect and what is it that's most important to them. So throughout my work in home care, I've also I've identified that there's a lack of assessment tools, particularly. There's no support to assist staff in being able to identify what's most important to an individual. We have all the other assessments, diet, mobility, cognitive assessment, all those other assessments that we've got access to, but there's no real, there isn't. There is nothing in home care to assess social connection, or to even look at an individual holistically in terms of what's most important to them, what does quality of life look to them, is wellness and reablement something that's important to them. So particularly within the home care space. And then in terms of my experience in residential aged care, that they're similar. There may be some tools available, but they're not always able to get to the bottom line of what's most important to individuals. And even if that does happen, maybe it's just a tick box experience where we go through the motions, we ask the questions, and we put it on file, and yay, that assessment's been completed, and nothing much more happens from that point. So throughout my experience, I've become very passionate, if you haven't noticed already, in terms of being able to find out what's most important to an individual, because I think that's what I would want. That's what I want now at the age I am now, and that's what I would want for my parents if entering residential aged care, and that's what I would want for myself. I'd want to be seen as me, as Edwina, as an individual, and what's important to me. So it's something that I've been very, very passionate about for a long time. And it's something that I think, obviously, there was the Royal Commission that identified that there are gaps here, but it's something that we really need to work on, both from a government level, with the aged care provider level, and within the staffing as well. So that the frontline staff, they're the ones that are involved all the time with with the residents, but it needs to come from higher up as well. So anyway, yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Is there anything more you'd like me to add, Jasmine? Oh, you're still muted.
Sorry, no, that was great. And I had so many thoughts as you were talking, but we can chat about this. Hopefully we've got some time in the discussion section. But yes, just what you were saying about your previous resident who had that quote where all she wanted really was just to be able to make you scones and hear about your life. And it's that sense of reciprocity that I think is so missing in this space of empowering older people to understand, to feel like they still have something meaningful to give, and to be able, like, because they can't be simply benefactors of care. They need, for social connection to work, there has to be a give and take. And so it's about understanding, at that personal level. But anyway, we can chat more about this. So I'll continue on. Okay. So we designed a social connection assessment tool for residential aged care. We had a feasibility pilot in 2021 in the middle of lockdown, where we co-designed with residents, aged care staff and management a tool for staff to ask questions about social connection, to understand residents' social connection needs. So they were 13 positively worded conversational style questions. So it was very important when we were designing these questions that they were strength-based. So they weren't going to trigger any kind of negative response. We tried very hard by testing them with staff and with residents to try and avoid and minimize that, because staff were worried that they were going to be having conversations that they weren't prepared for. And so we tested these questions on 45 older people in one uniting facility and one Salvation Army facility, and also older people in community care. And so the questions were about individual social connections, who they were, who's important to them, what types of things they like doing. And then we also asked questions about the activities and the hobbies that people like doing with others and what they used to do in the past that they would like to continue to do. And also the spaces and places in a facility and in their local community that they like connecting with others. So this small pilot found that the tool itself actually facilitated social connection between staff and residents. So just through the staff asking these questions, they felt that rapport had been built and they'd gotten to know the residents on a deeper level. And 68% of older people in residential aged care wanted to meet new people and make new connections. So this completely debunks the myth that older people are just in care facilities waiting to die, where on average a person can spend 2.8 years in Victoria in a facility, and it's a long time when you're feeling socially isolated and lonely. So it was what I found personally really enlivening was just seeing how much life is actually in these spaces and how much people still have social goals and aspirations. And so here's a quote from a staff member who said, "You get a very good understanding of the client. Some clients open up to you a lot. You become a lot more sympathetic and empathetic towards the client." And other staff members spoke about how learning about residents' physical health issues and mobility issues, how that severely impacts their ability to connect with others. Yes, and there was a staff member who said that he had found out that someone who had been caring for years used to do up old classic cars. And that was something that they both actually had a shared interest in. So now they talk about that. So that's the report from the pilot. So that's on our CIRI website if anybody wants to check that out. So now we're at the second stage where we're designing, testing and evaluating a social connection toolkit for residential aged care. So ARIA, the Australian Research Industry and Innovation Australia, has generously funded us to create a toolkit now and test this on 4 different sites. So the tool itself, the toolkit includes the tool. So we've reduced it through another session of co-design with residents and staff. We've reduced it to 11 conversational style questions for frontline care staff to understand resident social connections. We've created an easy to use instruction guide to outline what's the best environment to use the tool with a resident. And also we've created some e-learning modules for aged care staff to understand the basics about social connection and why it's important for health and well-being. And so the methods that we've used is pre and post mental well-being and satisfaction surveys with 86 residents across the 4 facilities. And we've also used pre and post evaluation surveys with 27 aged care staff. And we've conducted interviews with 16 residents and 15 staff across the 4 different sites. So it's 2 Uniting and 2 Salvation Army. And currently we're analysing the interview and survey data, and the findings will be out later this year in September. And so we'll publish that final report on the CIRI website and APO. So yeah, basically the tool is designed to allow staff to have have this to open up the conversation, have this dialogue to understand residents on a personal level and understand what they're interested in, so that this information can be used by a facility to understand the demographic that you have in your particular facility, so that you can cater your social programming at a more individual level. That is our aspiration. So we're hoping as well that at the end of this project that the toolkit can be rolled out and free to use for the sector, so that, yeah, it's a benefit, hopefully. Cool. So I just want to leave you with this fantastic photo of Edwina using the tool with a resident who was involved in the project. And I just really love this photo because you can see the absolute glee on the resident's face. And you can see Edwina really laughing. And it's a beautiful moment of connection. So the issues, I want to leave you with the issues. So social isolation and loneliness in residential aged care is a problem. And older people are the most vulnerable to this. And also, we're an aging population, so more people are going to end up in care facilities in the future. And it could be you, it could be a lot of us. And we should care about these issues because morally, it's the right thing for us to care. And again, it could be us or someone you love. And we spend as a country a lot of money on aged care, and we'll be spending a lot more. So let's do it better. Yeah, thank you. So now we have some time for questions and comments. And also, so the toolkit isn't out yet, but an aspect of the toolkit is the e-learning modules for aged care staff are on our Social Connection website. So I've linked it there, but anyone can just email me if they'd like to access them. Cool, so I'll stop sharing so that we can have the chat.
Thanks, Jess and Edwina. It was very insightful presentation. I really enjoyed it. I think, Edwina, your passion did come through. Like, I could see it, and it's really amazing. And it's like really inspiring in a way. And as well, it's going to be interesting to see once this toolkit is tested and put in practice, like the next steps, what it all brings. Yeah, we do have more like 10 to 15 more minutes. So I'll just like invite anyone to share their thoughts, reflections, ask questions, or even just share examples from your own practice.
Hi, it's Vanessa here.
Hello.
Hi guys, so I'm Vanessa. I'm from Southern Cross Care, and I can see many of my colleagues are online today. Thank you guys for sharing that. Just for the rest of the people, I've also worked previously with Edwina and Jasmine as part of this research project right from the beginning. As a DT myself, I'm really proud of the work that this team has done. Yes, you're preaching to the converted Jasmine and Edwina in this team, and then most of these people here are going, yes. I think I just wanted to share that part of being part of this process, knowing that we have gaps in our documentation and often the support we get from our leaders around social connection, I see this tool as a really useful tool to educate them as well, particularly the modules, as something we can show to facility managers and to executives in our various aged care organisations. And because it's got the statistics and some of this, even though it's basic research behind it, I think it's really important, thing that we can share with those people. One thing that I had loved about this process is that it's been driven by residents and our clients. The questions have come from them. Looking back on the first questions we used to where they are now, even we wrestled with it saying, oh, we need to change this word to this. And many of our residents go, no, this is how you should say it. So it's really been built by them. And I've seen some amazing connections made, particularly with our frontline staff. It's just a conversation, but this is the tool that helps them start that conversation. Often we don't do that deep dive. It's just one or two questions in our lifestyle assessment, And this tool is designed for anyone to use in any situation, and it can supplement tools that you're already using. I just wanted to share that. I'll be quiet now.
Thanks, Vanessa. Exactly. Something that just triggered a memory. So because we're analysing the interviews, one staff member that we spoke to had this great point where she was saying that because she's frontline care staff, she normally wouldn't get access to this kind of information, because lifestyle coordinators would, but it would be about when the resident comes into a facility, they answer some questions, and then that information gets stored away. But it's not, frontline care staff don't generally get to know these things about residents. And she was saying that what the tool is great for is that it gives permission to ask these questions. It creates a space to have these conversations, because she said, look, it'd be quite awkward to just walk into someone's room and say, hey, who are the people most important to you? You know, hey, what do you like to do as an activity? So even, just allowing that space for the conversation is a great thing. Ben.
Thanks, Jazz. That was really great. Just for everyone who doesn't know me, I'm a researcher with the Swinburne team as well. I love that this is like coalface first, ground-based, like people who are in the space and, like you say, already have that connection kind of tool. But you were saying, like at the start, this is not something like social connection is not kind of considered in the policy sort of space to make it into the Royal Commission stuff. Like, is there any, I was wondering if you have any reflections on how important it is to sort of, you know, well, is it better for this to be embedded at that top level so that it supports the bottom-up thing, or is it better to just have this as an organic bottom-up thing so that nobody can decide you shouldn't do it anymore? Yeah, just wondering if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Can I answer, and anyone else can jump in? I think ideally it should come from the top. I think we need to advocate for policies to be implemented. So I'm doing my PhD in social connection for older people in residential aged care, looking at Finland as a good practice case study. And they have undergone huge change in the last 30 years of implementing policies that directly relate to supporting older people's social and emotional well-being. And the proof is in the pudding. I read a study the other day that talked about how the use of pharmaceuticals like antidepressants has decreased in Finland, where it's increased in other countries like Australia and the US. And when I was there doing a case study, I was shocked at how different facilities were and how different people were doing things and how happy staff and residents looked. Yeah, so I do think that it needs to come from the top, but I think we can't wait for that. And it's people like Edwina and Vanessa who are in the sector that have to kind of advocate, and researchers as well. And does that answer?
Yeah.
Jacqueline.
Hi there, sorry, it just took me a little while to get to unmute everything. I just wanted to say that I think it's really important that we advocate to government around this, because at the moment in residential aged care, all the policy is guiding the sector towards a medical model of care. And I think the biggest one at the moment is around the care minutes that only addresses care staff and has a very limited care staff and registered nurses, but has a very limited amount of focus on anything but clinical and medical care. And so I think that is something that we really have to advocate for. And I think also within, and particularly residential aged care, which is the area that I've been predominantly focused on for the last couple of years, is that we have to have dedicated and qualified staff that are driving the social connection. I'm not saying that other staff can't do it, but if you don't have those dedicated qualified staff driving it, then we're not going to have any success. And we're just seeing more and more residential aged care providers cutting all of their staff that aren't covered by care minutes. It's just not, social connection is going to continue to decrease. I have recently come back from a trip where I visited the US and Canada through an international specialization skills fellowship. And in Canada, particularly in Ontario, they actually outlined through legislation that they have to have 36 minutes of allied health, including recreation staff, as part of their staffing requirements. And I think that's the way that Australia needs to go as well.
I completely agree, Jacqueline. I think it is really important for us to be looking at other care models that are doing this well, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can actually look to other countries. And as you said, similar to Canada, Finland has a policy which mandates how staffing numbers, staffing ratios. So it's 0.6 at the moment. And they also have mandated skill diversity. So there has to be a full-time social worker, a full-time, they call it cultural and well-being guide, but that's a lifestyle coordinator, and a physiotherapist. And they work together to do the social programming. So having, those different aspects, those different skills coming together, it really, really was very noticeable about the difference that it makes to residents' well-being. Yeah. And I think it is also about, to what you said, Ben, about should it come from the top, and you, Jacqueline, about advocacy. I think it is about aged care providers working together in this. And that's why this project was really so amazing, that it was two competitive aged care providers, the Salvation Army and Uniting, who wanted to work together and share resources to create this tool. Any other questions, comments?
I guess, sorry, if I could jump in again, that just triggers for me. I think this seems so important. What was just said, Jacqueline, around like the way that people are trying to shoehorn robots and AI into aged care at the moment as a way of solving for all of these kind of issues. And if we're talking about social connection and human expertise and all those sorts of things, they're just solving the wrong problems, right? It's not about just moving people in and out of beds and checking their vitals.
Exactly. That to me sounds like a version of hell, to be socially isolated and lonely and have a social robot come in and talk to me.
Yes, I agree.
And yet it's getting billions of dollars of investment.
Yeah. I do think that there is more conversation about this now. So I do feel a sense, it might be misguided, but a sense of optimism. I do think that people are talking about this more, and hopefully that will, show itself in terms of funding these kind of research projects and funding and changing policies. But I guess Edwina and Vanessa, just quickly, I feel like you guys have been kind of, I don't know, fighting this battle for quite a while. Do you think that you're getting more traction now with it? With aged care providers seeing this as a priority?
Vanessa, did you want to talk on that one?
Look, I think it's really important. I mean, looking at the people who are here, the majority of the names I see are people that are DTs and lifestyle people in the industry. And I think that we all know how important this is. We know we can probably, every person in this group could give a case study in detail about the importance of social connection and leisure and all those sorts of things. And I think you're right. It's about how do we have a voice around these things and this project, back to senior people, decision makers. And I think, for me, I sort of look at you guys and say, well, okay, what can we do to have this conversation, or for this research to have impact in their minds, in the decision makers' minds? Like Jackie mentioned about the care minutes. We actually talked about that as part of our research. How could we link in and provide some of this feedback? And it's about opening those doors. So I suppose for me, this is about, well, let's have more conversation. Let's actually look at you know, how could something like this tool be used in each of our facilities or organisations to spark a new conversation? It may not be new for us, but it may be new for the CEOs and the executives that are looking for new ways of addressing things, because I think they're the ones who have got the power to influence. And yeah, I think it's a collective conversation. So I'd be keen for people in this forum to think of ideas. Well, okay, go and have a look at this tool. You might like a piece of it. You might just want the videos. You might just want a couple of the questions to put in your lifestyle conversation. But what can we do with it to, you know, get that, have that influence and get it heard and seen?
Yes. I think also what's coming out of the data at the moment is that there needs to be a distinction made. If everybody in this room is lifestyle coordinators or in the lifestyle team, this tool is not necessarily for you, because you might be having these conversations with residents. You do understand the value of social connection, but it's more for frontline care staff to be also supporting residents in this way. So it also takes the pressure off the lifestyle team to be seen as the only ones responsible for this aspect of care. It's everybody's responsibility in a care facility.
I think also, Jasmine, I'll just add in terms of your question about whether we see a shift yet. I think in my opinion, I think we're still waiting to see that shift significantly, but I think we need some more evidence from the ground to show how important these conversations are in having them, and what differences we can make to people. And that can only be done through, you know, research grants and things like that, where we've been able to work together. But I also work, I'm also a casual academic teaching, you know, new and upcoming leisure and lifestyle diversional therapists, recreational therapists, as they're called now, to go into the sector. And there's a lot of feedback from a lot of their work placements and things like that, where they find that it's a battle to be out there in aged care facilities, particularly trying to preach to people that don't see social connection as an important element. And so I think I would say in that experience with that, I would say that there is definitely still a lot more to be done. And maybe some of the larger, or I don't know, there are some providers, maybe not necessarily larger, but some providers are aware of this and are getting onto it, definitely. But there are others, I think, that are just not equipped or not aware or not willing. And it is, you know, like Jackie said, that medical model, it's very focused on that. As far as I've seen it, in you know, I've only been around 20 years or so in the sector, but I see that it's always been medical model based. They always saw, you know, I was always considered as the diversional therapist, but I was the one that would keep them occupied. So as they weren't annoying the staff and those sorts of things. And it's just a horrible stigma and mentality that needs to be removed. So I think there's definitely a lot more work to be done in this space. And it's very exciting that there is some work happening, and it's great to see so many people on this call today. But yeah, hopefully we can get louder and have more people hear about it.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you, Edwina. Unless anybody else had any comments.
Yeah, thanks, Jess, thanks, Edwina. I think it was like really insightful presentation and great discussion afterwards. I'm just aware of the time, so we'll have to close. I did include a couple of links for everyone in the chat, so you can access some of those resources, and you can also find our contact or Jess contact details there, and feel free to reach out if you want to ask further questions, connect, or suggest something else we can do. I think, yeah, it's amazing that we are making, maybe they are small, maybe they are not like a massive changing, but I think it's like incremental improvements this project as well is contributing to, so that's all great. Thanks again for the beautiful presentation, and thanks to everyone who stick with us despite like technical issues. So yeah, have a great rest of the day.
Cool. Thanks, Milivan. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.